you, citizens of the world. I'm really glad you've tuned in or you're viewing another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. It's a little bit of a joyous week all of a sudden around here. And I'm here with another guy who's celebrating, and that's my pal, Thom Clark, one of our producers and sometimes a host. And we're going to chat for a while, and then a little bit later, we're going to bring on cousin Adam James. He's going to talk little Olympics, martial arts, and I'm sure some politics. And okay, so Thom, how about we continue our gushing about and the joy that we are sharing about Harris's vice presidential pick. She kept us waiting until Tuesday afternoon. And so I don't forget, I want to just let everyone know that the White Sox finally won, and this weekend they'll be playing the Cubs. So that's a Chicago deal. Thom's a Cub fan. I'm a White Sox fan. He's wearing an Obama shirt. Good morning to you, Thom.
Well, it's been a long time since we have felt positive about the body politic, but I think the last 2 weeks has shown an amazing shift in energy, in excitement, in numbers of people signing up to volunteer to do canvassing and postcard writing and phone calls in order to get everyone off their couches and voting this fall, because we know it's a critical election, and it's actually been a pretty amazing month in the history of politics. I'm wearing my Obama shirt because I haven't felt this happy and hopeful about what's to come in a long time. I think most of us were feeling rather dreary about a knock 'em down. It's the end of the world. We need to change things and go back to the 50s because everything was so good back in the 50s. And we were going to try to figure out how to live with that. Well, it's changed. And I think the VP pick is just a small part of this story. I think that the genuine excitement and, yes, indeed, the laugh that our presidential nominee now, Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is really something else, and we're still trying to measure it. The pollsters can't keep up. I think that the ground game that we've talked about being so important has a heck of a lot more volunteers now. The excitement, people are opening doors, I understand, in Wisconsin that they weren't opening a couple of weeks ago because they just didn't want to talk about the election anymore. Now they want to talk about it. That's really exciting to have at least part of the electorate a little more excited about the prospects of what might happen in the fall.
They're blissed out. I mean, I think you've been on some Zooms with, there's all these white guys for Harris and, progressives and environmental people with hundreds of thousands of people listening in. I think you've been on a couple of those.
Well, my dear wife, Jean, and I tuned in on a third act Zoom call. It started with Jane Fonda. We had Bernie Sanders in the middle and a couple of different authors and folks working at the grassroots. Although Bill McKibben is a pretty well-established national environmental leader, the rest of us are just elders trying to work through Third Act Illinois to save the environment for our grandkids. Couldn't be a more simple message than that. We're trying to use the skills we've learned over decades of organizing work and political work and apply it to trying to stop big oil pumping more out of the earth, when in fact we ought to keep it there and start moving to a carbon-less society. It's a very exciting project to be part of. And I'll tell you, it was neat to see these celebrities who are often at other stages talking with our group that we thought we'd have, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people. 11,000 people showed up to this environmental hearing, and that was indeed on the same evening this more better promoted progressive Zoom meeting that attracted 100,000 people plus. And each of these efforts are raising money that no one thought they could raise. In months of work, they've raised in a week. And it's just indeed a very exciting time.
My wife was the first one I heard using the term joy, and it was long before I saw walls come on television and say use it over and over, along with Weird. He really came in on that. But the race is still probably pretty tight, and we don't want to take too much for granted. At least our public position has to be: we can be joyous, we can be happy, we can be optimistic, but let's not take it for granted. And I think Nate Silver, who sort of jumps around these days, he actually, I was just shown a little while ago on my front porch, something on my wife's phone, that he basically has Harris a few points ahead of Trump in the Electoral College now. So while I know one of the things you caution about is not paying too much attention to polls, it's nice to see the polls moving in a direction that we can be happy about.
We do spend too much in the media, a plural noun, so there are lots of different corners of the media landscape. But the mainstream media, if we can refer to that, really, their news staffs have been so shrunken they almost are forced to do racehorse reporting, using the polls, overusing polls, because the polls are a picture of what was going on yesterday. It's from a moment in time. And most of the electorate, until maybe this past week or two, don't pay attention to the election until their kids are back in school and it's after Labor Day, and they start worrying about how they're going to get through the fall and, get Christmas presents for the kids and all that. And then there's this election, and most people wanted to just have this election go away. And suddenly, there may be a lot more interest in it. So, I'm not that worried about the polls, because I think particularly people like Nate Silver, he's had to change his new algorithm like 3 times in the last 2 weeks. So how does he know what's really going on when his own polling is kind of topsy-turvy right now? I think pollsters are trying to catch up with where the electorate is at. And the electorate is, I think, paying a lot more attention right now.
Well, it certainly has shifted, and the joy is flowing. I have to say that I always believed that even with Biden at the top of the ticket, we would win. I'm an eternal optimist, but I like to have faith in the American people. And while, we've certainly seen the fascist underbelly that we always knew was there come to the fore, I'm not sure if that means all those people have to be written off. In a lot of ways, I kind of think that there's just a lot of people who have grumbles in their life. They're a little bit dissatisfied about some stuff going on, and Trump somehow unleashed this, let your anger pour out. I think that this selection of Walz as the vice presidential candidate, and certainly Kamala Harris as our presidential candidate, has a different tone, a different vibe that I hope will reach our people. When I say our people, I mean Americans, in a way that lets us start to heal. I assume we're going to win. Let's hope so. And then it's really a time for healing and try to promote a politics of affirmation, where we promote the good things in life. We reinforce the strength, the common bonds, those kind of things. That's my
Well, I'm glad that you're looking that far ahead for that. I hope eventuality. Both of us have spent many decades of our lives trying to promote those ideals, and through the ups and downs of many failed as well as a few successful campaigns, we try to persevere. We will have to do a lot of work between now and November. We have 90 days left, and opportunities like Operation Swing State that our dear colleague Katie Hogan is so involved with is crucial. I think that the Walz pick is an effort on the part of Vice President Harris to really bolster that blue wall that will be so important, particularly with other swing states like Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, even Georgia. Still not quite within reach. It's just really critical that Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania go our way. And I think that's what the pollsters are talking about right now, is the shifting sands about electoral college. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, they kind of had it in the bag for Trump. And that's before he made one of the most terrible vice presidential picks that I've seen in my lifetime. And there
Or
was
the guy laying on the couch.
uh, which apparently is not a correct story, uh, even though it was supposedly quoting his book, which I have
Yeah.
not read.
Yeah.
I did not want to give the guy a dime, and look what he's done with it. So the former president who showed up for the National Association of Black Journalists conference recently did not get what apparently he expected to get, except maybe some sound bites they can use trying to attract disaffected black male voters. I think that's the main reason he agreed to go on this panel, which had one very favorable Fox host as one of the three panelists. But those other two panelists really called him on his record, and he didn't know what to do with smart black women questioning his fake stories. And they called him on it, and I think it ended up being yet one more major blunder when we look back on this election year that the former president made, trying to reclaim the White House seemingly for life, forever. Because, as he said recently to a bunch of evangelicals, you got to vote this year, and then you don't have to worry about ever voting again.
You know, I did a bunch of reading this morning before we got on to record our show, and one of the things that stood out was a story about how various people squabbled about who would be the vice presidential pick and the role of Nancy Pelosi. And I think that she played a role in cooling President Biden out and leading him toward his decision not to run and to back Kamala Harris. Pelosi continues to impress me. You know, probably haven't agreed with her politics all along, but she certainly is one powerful woman, one smart woman, and she shapes the direction of our politics.
I think that she is an example of someone with power who knows how to wield it without grabbing a headline every time she's ready to make a move. She is a masterful behind the scenes legislator. I mean, that's really her strength. And what is legislating? It's trying to find common ground. It's been really hard to do with our body politic the last 4 to 8 years or longer. But I think once again, we're grasping for an opportunity to show a different way of governing. And, that includes some backroom deals sometimes, because that's how you get the sausage made. But I agree with you. I think Nancy Pelosi is really, for the last decade, a unsung hero for the role she has played in a very divided Congress, in a very divided country, to actually get some things done. And she and the Biden administration got a boatload done the last 3.5 years, and a very, very strong record for the vice president and now her new pick for VP to run on this fall.
I'm going to throw a couple things in here just so that I have them on the record. We don't, because we can go talk about some other things, but Fetterman, who is a senator from Pennsylvania, who wears sweatshirts, et cetera. We've always kind of liked him, but on the question of Palestine, Israel, he's been a little to the right on that, I think. And but he also portrayed Shapiro, who apparently has his own presidential ambitions, which probably kept him out of getting the nomination for the VP. Fetterman portrayed Shapiro as a political opportunist with his own ambitions. And on another front, Sean Fain, who is the president of the United Auto Workers, told the vice president's vetting team that organized labor was most excited about Andy Beshear from Kentucky, Democrat in a Republican state, twice elected, and Walz, and would not be enthusiastic about Shapiro or Kelly. I like that.
And I think, that's not a bad analysis. I think that there were other issues with Shapiro, but he kind of took himself out on whether or not he's planning to run for president later on. I think he likes being governor, and I think he would have brought more problems to Vice President Harris's effort, particularly around Israel and Gaza. We can slide into that issue for a moment if you wish, but uh, I think she went, as one newspaper account had it this morning, she went with her gut. And I think that the coining of the phrase off the cuff on one of the cable shows that Governor Walz did about the other side being weird has really captured everyone's imagination. And it was not only a great soundbite, but it's something that's part of the buildup of energy that people are feeling excited about again. And I think that's really important. In the background, we will have our still President Biden for the next 6 months. And one of the big things on his lap, self-created, with his continuing strong support of Israel, is the mess in Gaza, which really is threatening to go into a much broader theater of war right now. That may have been what Biden was looking at with his strong support with Israel to date, though I can't imagine he expected the kind of devastation of Gaza that's undertaken. I mean, people need to keep in mind that a area about the size of the city of Chicago, with about the same number of people, has had 2/3 of its population relocated twice in the last, 8 months that this terrible calamity has been going on. And all their hospitals and schools and whatnot are bombed out. I mean, it's just a totally devastated wasteland. And I think that the big elephant in the room that people haven't talked about that much is Iran. And, Iran is what brought on Jimmy Carter losing and Reagan into the White House, which is when this mess we've been living with really started. If you want to, look at some historical context here, at least in my mind, that's when our troubles began. Whether it's Reaganomics or killing the air traffic controllers union, that whole kind of anti-labor thread that came into our body politic. We have to look at it really starting with the hostage crisis in Iran. Remember that?
Right. I remember.
Well, that's what's percolating in the background of this widening war. And for better or for worse, the fraudulent fascist Netanyahu is the bulwark against these competing forces coming in from now 2 or 3 sides. It'll be very interesting to see how Harris picks up that particular plank in the platform and what she does with it.
Well, I think they're a little critical of Israel these days, and we'll see how it handles it, but it has ramifications within the Democratic Party. There's a thing out there, a group of people called a squad, which are progressive legislators, and Bowman in New York was defeated with a lot of AIPAC money. And just this past Tuesday, Cori Bush in Missouri, who came out of, the demonstrations back then, she was defeated Tuesday by a guy named Wesley Bell. This is for a congressperson out of St. Louis, and AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, put over $8 million into his campaign. So it's still an issue internally. And unfortunately, one of the congresspersons that I like, Cori Bush, is no longer going to be on the ballot.
Right. It shows the influence of a part of the Israel lobby, because we have colleagues who are part of Not in My Name and other affiliated Jewish groups who are opposed to the current conduct of the Israeli government, particularly in regards to Gaza. So. But indeed, some of the moneyed interests behind the Democratic Party have strong support for Israel. And that's historic, and it's not going to change overnight. And it's a dynamic within our multifaceted party that will have to be dealt with.
There's a lot of other stuff that we could talk about. There's Bangladesh, there's Venezuela, there's the unfortunate far-right race riots going on in Great Britain. Although they may be subsiding. But I'm going to ask you a couple more things while we have
Sure.
time, Thom. One would be your thoughts on the still upcoming Democratic convention, and then we can close out with some talk about what you've been working on.
Well, I think that the Democratic Convention will be hopefully a grand celebration that will continue this feeling of joy, but also energizing the party base to get out there and get all those couch voters off the couch into the polling place this fall. I mean, that really is what needs to happen over the now less than 90 days. There will be, around 60 days left when the convention is done. I am not expecting a police riot or protester riots. I think that that's been a little overplayed by the media, though there will definitely be Gaza protesters and reproductive right protesters. And there still needs to be some permit issues worked out between the city and protesters. I don't think it's going to be a 68. I think that's kind of a media creation. And it was an important chapter in Chicago's political convention history, certainly. But I think this year is going to have a different flavor.
I hope so. And I've been saying that I was interviewed during the last Democratic convention over 30 times. There is a picture of me from 68 that of trying to tip over a paddy wagon, and it's gotten some attention again. I've done interviews with USA Today, with NPR and CBS is coming back with a national crew to interview me, and they all want to talk about 68. But I do agree with you. I don't think there'll be the massive turnout, and I hope that the police force is much more educated. Hopefully the whole deal is smarter. We don't have Abby Hoffman talking about putting acid in the water supply. I hope it goes smoothly. We got a couple minutes left, Thom Clark, and I know that since you left your regular slot as a weekly host on the Live from the Heartland show, you've been hard at work on some other projects. And besides fixing up your house, give us a little hint about what you're working on and the status of all of that.
Well, I'm very proud to be a volunteer with the investigative project on race and equity. Raceandequityproject.org is where you can find us. This is an effort to reinvigorate data-driven investigative journalism, good storytelling. We are also training young journalists of color to do this kind of investigative journalism. And within our first year of operations, we've already been winning a bunch of journalism awards. In particular, a story we did in conjunction with WBEZ on police traffic stops continues to have reverberations. Even in the paper this week, we have a story about how the cadre of police officers who stopped and ultimately killed Dexter Reed a few months ago had been involved in 50 traffic stops within 3 days of that particular incident. Of those 50 traffic stops, not a single ticket was issued, much less any guns confiscated or felonies assessed, which is the police department's rationale for doing these kind of random police stops. By far, Black men and Hispanic men are the ones that are often pulled over, often not even for a moving violation. So there are a lot of reforms that need to be done in the way that police are trained, in the way that they respond to these kind of potentially heated situations. And our investigative reporting using data collected by the state of Illinois over the last 20 years off of legislation that then State Senator Barack Obama passed because he was tired of hearing stories about driving while Black. And we now have this incredible data set, which the investigative project has made available in usable form. This fall, we will have a couple stories out in Carbondale and Champaign using student reporters talking about the same issue. Students on those campuses being pulled over by campus police. It'll be a very interesting series of stories. Raceandequityproject.org.
Well, Thom, keep up the good work, and I'm always glad to see you, and I have seen you a few times lately again. It's you're a regular on the show. I call you one of our executive producers or lifelong, whatever title you want, as well as being a host. and coming on the show. We are living in an exciting time, and we have a lot of opportunity to make a difference. And I do think that young people are certainly aware of all what's going on. I think a lot of older people are. I have a good feeling again, like a lot of people throughout the country, that things have shifted in a direction that gives us some real possibilities to make the world a better place. And I know the work you're doing and the work a lot of the people who listen to this show or view this show are doing will help make that difference. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Michael. And sign up for Operation Swing State. Get ready to do canvassing or phone calls or postcard parties. My wife and I are planning to do one in the next couple of weeks. There are many different ways you can get involved with this effort this fall. It is important for the future of our country and our families and our kids.
Okay, everybody, stay tuned. We'll be back with more Live from the Heartland after a quick musical break. And we're going to bring on Sensei Adam James, talking not only about the attraction of martial arts and an award he got, but some commentary on the Olympics and perhaps a little information and discussion on transgender athletes. Be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Welcome back, all you citizens of the world, to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. My next guest is Sensei, I think that's right, Sensei Adam James. And full disclosure, for those regular listeners of the show, you already know he is my cousin. And I got to know him when he came from Hawaii and was playing football at Northwestern. And we've been pals ever since. We're in touch regularly. We share information, and I drag him onto the show to talk about various things, usually related to sports, some politics and spirituality, and his own film work. So with all that said, Adam, I know that you have just received an award, and I think that let's hear a little bit about it.
Well, yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always great to be on Live from the Heartland. You and Katie do a fantastic job, and I really appreciate all of the Midwest people out there who are friends and family who are out there listening to the show. Hello to everybody in the Heartland. So, yes, I was very honored to have been inducted into the United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame 3 weeks ago in Las Vegas. It was a very wonderful event, great gathering of martial artists and friends and family. And I was inducted as the Man of the Year at the 25th anniversary United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame.
Well, what is the Martial Arts Hall of Fame?
Well, there are a number of different Martial Arts Hall of Fames. This particular one is based here in the United States. It's run by a gentleman named Dr. John Terry. And, you know, Hall of Fames are really a great opportunity to kind of come together, gather, reflect, appreciate those that have come before and done great things. But I also believe that one of the great things about Hall of Fames is the opportunity to plan and strategize for the next great things that we're going to strive to do in our lives, in our community, and in this particular case, in this industry, in the martial arts industry.
Well, I got to say, my experience with the martial arts is pretty limited. I did, I was a tackle in college football.
Yes.
And the coach got me to wrestle one time, and that wasn't martial arts, but I got my ass beat big time. And another time I was in the field house, and there was a guy doing judo. And I asked him, I assume that's a martial art. And I said to him, does this really work? And we did a little go at it, and he cleaned me right up. So I have great respect. I've known a lot of people who've been into the martial arts. I've seen all kind of storefront operations. How about you give us a little report, Adam James, on the state of martial arts and what is its draw?
Well, fantastic. Well, first of all, I will say that wrestling is a martial art. Wrestling is one of the great martial arts. Yes, it may not have the tapestry that some of the martial arts that people think of first, like judo and kung fu and karate. But wrestling is a physical endeavor of interacting with others in a way to protect, defend, and inflict. So there are techniques and skills that are taught in wrestling. Really great wrestlers are also taught character development which is what oftentimes people think of as martial arts. It's more than just punching and kicking and grabbing somebody. It's about striving to become a better person and helping our community out, which is what many people think of when they think of martial arts, more than just punching and kicking. And wrestling, again, in its best forms is that. Martial arts has grown so much over the years. Of course, back in the 40s and 50s, it was considered exotic, erotic, and obscure and secretive. But today we're realizing that it's actually everywhere and everybody's been doing it and are doing it. Well, most people are, many people are. And wrestling and boxing are examples of Western martial arts. Now, what's been happening over the last, 50 years or so is that there's been an integration of martial arts. There's been people coming together, getting to know each other, training together, sharing ideas. And so as a result, martial arts has evolved, it's grown, it's become more integrated. And there are many examples of martial arts systems that have done that. Of course, today's sport, mixed martial arts, is a great example of an integration of martial arts. A lot of wrestling and boxing involved in that particular martial art. There's also very specific martial arts like Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, which isn't really an eclectic martial art as much as it is an expansive and simplified martial art concept, which is that we should be able to function fully as a human being, be able to, punch, kick, and throw if we're taught how. But then we simplify those techniques into something that's very refined. And that was Bruce Lee's philosophy of martial arts, very unique and special.
Adam, when I watch television, I flick around on the channels, and some of the sports channels as well as the major channels will have, yes, I guess it's mixed martial arts. It's people who are, tackling and punching, and sometimes it's a little rough to watch. I mean, I used to be a big boxing fan, as you know, and my dad, yes, your uncle, produced the Philly Saturday Night Fights. I grew up liking boxing, but in my older age, when I see some people getting pummeled, I'm a little taken back. And when I watch, yes, this newer version of fists and kicking without the big gloves, I'm just sometimes a little overwhelmed. What do you think it is that attracts people? People like to see other people getting beat up, or what might be the attraction?
Yes, well, no doubt about it. As you know, when you watch action movies, those fight scenes are often what people really get excited about. And so it's understandable that these mixed martial arts, events are very popular. People enjoy watching action. And, this is what mixed martial arts is. It's a very action-filled sporting event. Yes, it's also true that it's a sporting event involving inflicting damage on another human being. And, some people celebrate and enjoy that. Other people find it uncomfortable to watch. And it's understandable. In society, if we see two people fighting, instinct runs over and says, stop. Police are called, and their job is to stop the fight. But in mixed martial arts, everybody stands around and cheers it on. So yes, it is a unique human experience. I'm not going to go into the psychological reasons why people like it or don't. But I will say that martial arts is more than just, hurting somebody. It is an endeavor of striving to become better, to help our community. And, there are millions and millions of martial artists out there who do not engage in hurting other people, whether it's in a combative sport or in life in general. They're just not a bully. That's not what martial arts is about. But they're awesome, and they're great martial artists, and they're incredibly physically fit and super smart and really engaging in their community. And to me, that's what great martial arts is. I will also say, earlier you mentioned that you were not a martial artist, but you then mentioned a few things that you've done that are martial art oriented. And I'll also say that you've been in several of the world's greatest martial arts movies. You were in Code of Silence, which was Chuck Norris's, many people feel, his best movie. And then you also did Steven Seagal's very first movie, Above the Law, as well as his most successful movie, Under Siege, which I had the honor to work with you on. And all of those movies are phenomenal. And to me, that's another area where martial arts connects with people, is in the film industry. And I'm very honored to be a part of that. And that's, of course, as a child growing up, I was deeply inspired by Bruce Lee and those kind of martial art movies. So I was drawn to that. I pursued that. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to be doing this now. And I will also say that this is part of where I think martial arts kind of really connects with people. So when I was in Las Vegas for the United States Martial Arts Hall of Fame event, there was 3 days of training. There was a camp, the International Martial Arts Council 3-day training camp. And I was the very last instructor to teach after the 3 straight days. It's literally, you'd go from one martial arts instructor to another. Every 30 to 45 minutes, they would switch. 3 straight days of that. So these people who were doing the camp were, real tenacious people, really putting it all in there. And after 3 straight days of going from one person to another, their brains were just loaded with information. So what I taught was martial arts for film, or stunt fighting with martial arts for film. So I did a little film, session or camp. And it was really fun. What we did, very first thing, introduced myself, talked a little bit about martial arts and film. And then I asked everybody to get together with 2 or 3 others, small groups of at least 3 people. So one person can hold the camera and the other 2 people can age. And quickly, of course, everybody starts looking at each other. And I say, hold on a second, though. Because in the film world, it's very common for you to show up on the set and know nobody there. It's your very first time meeting these people. This is actually really common in our industry. So you have to have the skill set to immediately connect with people. Meet somebody you've never met with them before, have a brief positive engagement, and then start talking work. The small pleasantries need to get away because it's time to focus and get the job done. So that's a skill in itself. So I said to the group, I challenge you, if you're up for it, don't just team up with people you already know, but try to find somebody you haven't met before. And of course, immediately when I said go, they all started getting together with others that they knew. But that was a great way to start.
Let me ask you about the role of women. I mean, the role of women on every level in this country and in the world has changed, whether it be politics, the arts, sports. We're watching the Olympics these days. I mean, I've been full tilt watching the Olympics, and the women in all areas are outstanding. And but when I watch the mixed martial arts stuff on the TV with a lot of fists and tackling, there's a lot of women.
Yes.
How much of in the whole world of martial arts have women been participating? I know Muhammad Ali's daughter was a hotshot boxer and probably other. But
yes.
How about the women in martial arts?
Well, first of all, women in martial arts have been there all along. They've always been there, and they've always been phenomenal. There's a martial arts system called Wing Chun Kung Fu. Wing Chun was a woman. She was one of the greatest Kung Fu martial artists in China, who actually adapted her martial arts to fit her better. And many people feel that her philosophy of martial arts is supreme, being more simplified and more focused. So yes, martial arts women have always been there. My instructor in Hawaii, Mike De La Vega, Sensei Mike, he would often tell me that one of his first and most important instructors was his grandmother. And she trained him in his family system of Okinawan Kempo, the Miyagi family system, because he was a relative of Shojin Miyagi, the great karate man from Okinawa. But women have been very influential in martial arts. Now, I will point out in regards to that mixed martial arts sport, is that when the sport was initially growing and becoming more and more popular, the leader of the largest league or organization, the the Ultimate Fighting Championships, or UFC, he was against it. He felt it was not right, and he was hesitant to allow for a woman martial artist, women mixed martial arts, to be promoted by his organization. And then there was a woman that came along who changed a lot of that. And her name was Ronda Rousey. And Ronda Rousey was one of the great grapplers or judo people. Her mother is one of the great judo practitioners, a champion of judo. And my dear friend, Jean LaBelle, was one of her mother's instructors and was also an influence on Ronda Rousey, as was his training associate, Go Korchevetchian. And when Ronda first hit the scene, a lot of people were a little hesitant to watch a woman martial artist do this to another person. But she was just exceptionally good, became incredibly popular. And so UFC engaged with women martial artists, mixed martial artists, and it has grown dramatically since. So a lot of props to Ronda and also all the other women who have participated in the early stages of mixed martial arts to get it to the point where it is now, and it continues to grow.
Adam, let me ask you about people who are regular listeners or viewers of this show have heard you talk about it, but you're involved in producing a film where you play the lead. And how about giving us a little bit of information about the Man of Copper?
Yes. Well, I'm very, very honored and grateful and blessed to be playing this role. There's a character named Doc Savage. And in the 1930s and 40s, this was one of the most popular characters in the world. It was a pulp fiction character. And many people consider him the world's first superhero. that character inspired Superman, Batman, and Indiana Jones. Doc Savage is basically an adventurer, a detective, a scientist, and a martial artist. The character was kind of lost to history to a certain degree. There were some comic books that were created with this character, licensed and created. And in the 1970s, there was one movie, a feature film starring Ron Ely. Ron was the actor who played Tarzan in the Tarzan television show. He was very popular, and he got to play the role of Doc Savage in that movie, Doc Savage, Man of Bronze. Unfortunately, the movie didn't do very well. And so, again, it kind of disappeared into history. But, there's an enormous amount of people out there who are huge fans of that character. They gather at Pulp Fiction festivals. There was just a big one in the Midwest, Pulp Fest. And they would love to see this character be rejuvenated. So there's a guy who fits that bill. He literally is a huge fan of Doc Savage, and he's an independent filmmaker in Fresno, California. His company is called Valleywood. And this gentleman, his name is Chris Mackey, had attended a large martial arts gathering event called Dragon Fest. Dragon Fest is an annual expo held here in Los Angeles in Southern California, technically in Glendale, where the Martial Arts History Museum is located. And Dragon Fest is a fundraiser and an event to sponsor, to benefit the museum. I was at Dragon Fest 2 years ago making an appearance, and Chris Mackey of Valleywood saw me there, and he approached me after and asked me to play this role. He also asked another guy who was at the event named Americus Avasamas to play the lead villain. And Americus is an amazing martial artist as well. He's become my really great friend. And Americus is a former USA sumo champion who then got into acting and was in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, having a scene with Johnny Depp. He was in this new Star Wars show called Boba Fett, a Star Wars story. And he plays our main villain. So we have this heavy martial arts aspect of our show. We filmed 3 episodes, each is 20 minutes in length, in Fresno, California. And we will be releasing the pilot season, these first 3 episodes, very soon, probably this fall. And we'll have an announcement on that very soon.
Well, let's move on to another topic, or I'm sure it's all related, but
Yes.
when you and I were on the family Zoom recently, we were
Yes.
talking the Olympics. And so I'd like to get your take on the Olympics. But one of the things you did bring up was this whole issue over gender misconceptions at the Olympics. So maybe you'll touch on that, but I'd love to hear your impressions of all the events that we've been watching for the last 10 days or so.
Well, that's what's really great about sport. As you know, sport gathers people, and we are inspired by amazing performances and also by oftentimes the missed opportunities. And we see those and we feel for those athletes and those human beings that have put so much into these opportunities. So absolutely, I've been, of course, following all the major sports, the women's gymnastics, absolutely phenomenal. All of those athletes, tremendous, the greatest gymnasts of the United States ever, Simone Biles, and as well as the others who've all done so well. The swimming, Ledecky and her amazing performance, the men's basketball team doing so well, the women's basketball team absolutely dominating. So there's so many great things, but not just for our country. It's also really inspiring when we watch these other countries and their athletes performing so well, and the effect, the inspiration that they provide for their nation and their citizens. It's just, just a phenomenal thing. That's why I love sports and why I love the Olympics.
You wanted to address the gender question? There was
Yes.
you were talking the other
sure.
day.
Yes, sir. So for those that know the sport of boxing, boxing is a unique sport. Professionally, it is unregulated. I mean, there are various aspects of state athletic commissions, but there is no national or international commissioner of boxing. And there are some experts in our sport, some professionals in our sport who believe that there should be, which would clean up a lot of the issues. Amateur boxing is even worse. So there is an organization called the International Boxing Association, the IBA, which is loosely affiliated with the country of Russia. And the IBA has a bad reputation. They have had numerous scandals and issues through the amateur sports world, to the point where recently the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, stripped them of all rights to in any way regulate the amateur boxing scene. And the IOC has taken over the international, amateur boxing, and is in charge of this Olympics. So what you want to know about the IBA is in a recent World Boxing Championship, they did a number of tests on the athletes. And right before the championship fights, they decided that 2 of them were no longer eligible. After they competed in the tournament, after they'd gotten all the way to the finals, the IBA did not release what these tests were, how they conducted them, or what the actual results were. But they did blanketly say that these people tested for being XY chromosome, which is rather odd that they had that exact analysis, but that's what they claimed, and they denied these 2 athletes from performing. When their eligibility was reviewed by the IOC determined that they were female at birth, and they would be female in this Olympic competition. Both of them look more masculine than feminine in some aspects, look very strong, and one of them apparently has if not both of them, have some genetic predispositions that make them higher in testosterone than other women. And so there's been a belief in some circles and some social media posts, certainly, that they're not women, that they're actually men. And the one who's from Algeria in particular has been the target for a lot of this. And we have to know is that in the country of Algeria, which is a Muslim country, it is literally illegal for her to claim to be an opposite sex. It is illegal to go through a sexual transition. So she was born a woman and she's been competing as a woman and she's lived her whole life as a woman. That brings up the question of, should we be doing testosterone tests for these athletes and having certain levels that are acceptable versus not? Well, those are all discussions to me, for the organization. I believe in freedom. I believe that these organizations should have the right to set their own rules of what they allow and don't allow. And this goes for high school sports, college sports, and professional sports. I believe that the government shouldn't be getting involved with these and be arguing where these lines should be set at, whether they allow for, doctors to check for people's gender or whether they have testosterone testing, however that's handled. I believe these organizations should set up those rules and control that. I'm not a believer that the government should get involved with that, but I do understand there's a lot of angst out there. A lot of people are very angry, concerned. A lot of that is fueled by misinformation, but I do wish them all well. And again, it comes back to what the Olympics is all about, which is gathering, competing, and celebrating.
Well, Adam James, I want to thank you. I'm going to call you Sensei Adam James these days, now that you got the award of the Man of the Year. And we'll have you back on not too far off. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
If I may, I'll leave one last thought for you, because I really enjoy talking about movies, martial art movies. That's a big part of my life. And I will share with all of you that this year is the 70th anniversary of The Seven Samurai, what is considered probably the greatest martial art movie ever, and a movie that many people feel is the greatest movie ever, deeply inspiring to modern filmmakers like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. The Seven Samurai by Kurosawa is out now. You can check it out. I highly recommend it. One of the greatest movies ever.
Okay, Adam James, thanks for coming on, and we'll have you on again. As we go out, I want to share a little information with all our listeners and viewers. Some of you may know about Archie's Cafe and the Susan Roman Gallery over on Loyola Avenue here in Chicago, just to the west of the tracks, the L tracks at Loyola. And the university bought the building, and they're going to, who knows what they're going to do with it. But Archie's has been a wonderful gathering spot, food, music, etc., for a while now. It'll only be there through later into August, and it's usually open Wednesday through Saturday. And you should go check it out. There's also an exhibit over there at Susan Roman Gallery. And I want to call everyone's attention to Talia Hall, which is going to have Whitney this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm proud to say that Lake J, which includes my son, Cadian, he is Lake J. They came out of Twin Peaks. Some of the Twin Peaks are playing with Whitney now. All of it's the 10th and the 11th, that's Saturday and Sunday at Talia Hall. There's a great report on Talia Hall that was on WBEZ's Reset. And I'll be on the porch Sunday with my photos and my books. I'll be at the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest. I want to thank everybody who made this show possible. That would be Adam James, Tom Clark, Katie Hogan, Lynn Orman, Hal James. Everybody continue to do good in the world, because if you continue to do good in the world, together, we're going to make it a better world. We can do it. All power to the people.